Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into what I like to call a thrilling organizational detective story. We're going to look at a massive, radical workflow transformation that absolutely changed how a major corporation handled its day-to-day operations. We'll explore the incredible highs of business process reengineering, or BPR, and then we're going to flip the script and examine the very real, kind of hidden dangers that come with it. All right, let's just jump right in. So, have you ever lost a deal just because of paperwork? Man, it's a universally frustrating experience, right? Bureaucratic delays, endless forms, waiting on approvals, they don't just cause headaches, they cost companies actual real money. They completely delay sales staff from finalizing their deals, and in the worst-case scenarios, the customer just gets fed up and walks away. That exact pain point is literally where our story begins today. Section 1. The 6-Day Waiting Game. To see how this plays out in reality, let's look at IBM Credit. They're a division providing financing for customers to buy IBM hardware and software. Now, they were stuck in a system so convoluted it was actively losing them sales. Let's walk through these 5 agonizing handoffs. Step 1. The salesperson telephones a request and it gets manually logged on a piece of paper. Step 2. It's sent over to the credit department, logged into a computer to check creditworthiness, written on a form, and then passed along. Step 3. The business practices department modifies the standard loan covenant to meet the customer's terms. Step 4. It goes to a pricer who figures out the appropriate interest rate. And finally, Step 5. A clerical group takes all this fragmented info and prepares a quote letter, which finally makes its way back to the salesperson. That is 5 distinct stages, 5 handoffs. And because of this massive chain, the whole process took an average of 6 full days. 6 days. Imagine waiting almost a week just to get a financing quote so you can close a sale. Section 2. The 90-minute epiphany. After trying and failing to improve this sluggish process, 2 managers finally decided they had had enough. They set up this brilliant physical experiment to find the exact bottleneck. Literally, they took a single financing request and physically walked it around the building through all 5 steps, sitting right there with the staff at each stage. And here is the shocking aha moment. When they bypassed all the waiting times in the inboxes and just looked at the actual work being done, the entire process took only 90 minutes. Yeah, you heard that right. 90 minutes of actual work, buried inside 6 agonizing days of waiting. Section 3. Generalists over specialists. This dramatic realization sparked a fundamental redesign of their whole credit approval process. You see, the basic problem was that the old workflow had been designed for the absolute most complex credit requests IBM ever received. It assumed every single request needed a dedicated specialist, a dedicated credit checker, a dedicated pricer. You get the idea. But management realized that in the vast majority of cases, no specialist judgment was actually called for. It was literally just clerical work, just looking up credit ratings and plugging numbers into standard formula. So the radical change? Replace those specialists with generalists who could undertake all 5 processes from start to finish. Under this new model, specialists are now only called in for non-standard or unusually complex exceptions. Section 4. The BPR Miracle. By fundamentally rethinking and radically redesigning this business process, IBM Credit achieved something pretty incredible. The turnaround time took a dramatic plunge. What previously took an average of 6 days under the old system was now being processed in just 4 hours. 4 hours. It's the seemingly magical outcome of a radical redesign, just stripping away all those unnecessary handoffs and empowering a single generalist to drive the task to completion. But hey, the time saved was only part of the triumph. I really want to hammer home this ultimate metric here, a 100 times increase in total deals. Just let that sink in for a second. They actually slightly reduced their total number of employees, yet they managed to increase the total number of deals processed by 100 times. I mean, it is basically a textbook success story of business process reengineering. Section 5. The dark side of BPR. However, as incredible as the IBM Credit miracle is, it honestly doesn't tell the whole story. Because despite these phenomenal numbers, BPR has, in many instances, produced really disappointing results for other organizations. There is absolutely a dark side to this radical approach. Let's look at this famous 1993 recommendation from Hammer and Champy, who are essentially the founding fathers of BPR. They advised companies to obliterate existing processes and start with a clean sheet of paper. Now, on the surface, especially after seeing the IBM story, that sounds great, right? But I want to caution you here. This exact advice contains a massive hidden danger. Obliterating what currently exists can be incredibly risky. And here is exactly why. To redesign a process, you must first understand it. It sounds super simple, but one of the major realizations to emerge from BPR failures is that most business processes are deceptively complex. Process mapping exercises have revealed that even seemingly simple tasks, like, say, the procurement of office supplies, involve complex and highly sophisticated systems of interactions among a whole bunch of organizational members. The reality is, organizational behavior is deeply intertwined. Processes involve complex interactions that aren't always visible on a standard org chart. In fact, many organizational routines operate totally fine without any single person fully understanding the entire mechanism. It's like this collective rhythm. Therefore, taking a clean sheet approach and just obliterating the existing processes runs the very real risk of destroying organizational capabilities that have been carefully nurtured over a long period of time. You might accidentally throw away the exact thing that makes the company function smoothly in the first place. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. When you're looking at transforming how your organization works, you really have to weigh the miraculous potential of BPR, like we saw with IBM Credit, against the severe risk of destroying long-nurtured routines. So I'll leave you with this question to ponder. Will your redesign save the business, or will it accidentally destroy its hidden capabilities? It's a delicate balance between radically rethinking the future and deeply understanding the present.
We're tackling something literally every professional, manager, and business owner grapples with at some point. Think about it. How do organizations actually translate those high-level, pie-in-the-sky boardroom strategies into everyday, on-the-ground success? We put all this time into planning, right? But executing that plan across an entire company? Well, that requires a very specific toolkit.
So, here's the big question. How do managers actually know if their strategies are working? I mean, once the fancy slide presentations are over and the real work begins, how do leaders avoid total chaos? How do they avoid wasting resources when bringing their business models to life? The secret sauce lies in how they manage and control the actual work being done.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover why control systems matter, the pillars of strategic control, characteristics of effective control, types of control systems, and then we'll zoom in on operational control and finally hit the ground level with task control.
Starting things off with Section 1. Why control systems matter.
Now, I know when you hear the word control, your mind might immediately jump to, dictatorial micromanagement. But let's set the record straight with this definition. Strategic control systems are the formal target setting, measurement, and feedback systems that allow managers to evaluate whether a company is implementing its strategies successfully. It's not just about acting like a watchdog to see how resources are being used right this second. It's also about creating the right incentives to keep your employees motivated and laser-focused on solving future problems together.
Moving on to Section 2, the pillars of strategic control.
So, what are we actually trying to achieve here? There are 4 primary goals of strategic control that help organizations get better and better over time: superior efficiency, superior quality, superior innovation, and customer responsiveness. Basically, every single control a manager puts in place should be supporting at least one of these 4 pillars.
Let's break these down, starting with efficiency. Simply put, efficiency is just the ratio of inputs required to produce a single unit of output. Think about it. Without yardsticks to measure your inputs, like raw materials or human resources, against the final goods you're producing, managers would have absolutely no idea if their new ideas or experiments are actually working. You simply can't improve what you can't accurately measure. It's that simple.
Next up is quality. And let's face it, in today's world, competition is almost entirely about quality. Strategic control gives managers direct, measurable feedback on their goods and services. For example, if you're consistently tracking the number of customer complaints or counting exactly how many new cars are being returned to the dealership for repairs, you're getting a stark, undeniable picture of the quality you've built into your product.
Now, what's really fascinating is how innovation goes hand in hand with responsiveness. To unlock superior innovation, successful managers actually decentralize authority. They empower their employees to experiment and take risks. But at the exact same time, by monitoring employee behavior, they create incentives for staff to be super helpful and consistent toward customers. It's a brilliant way to radically boost customer responsiveness while still letting creativity flow.
All right, that brings us to Section 3. Characteristics of effective control.
According to the research, an effective control system actually needs 3 mandatory characteristics to work in the real world. First, it has to be flexible. It needs to bend and adapt to unexpected events. Second, it absolutely must provide accurate information that paints a true picture of how the organization is performing. And third, it has to supply this data in a timely manner.
And I really want to emphasize that third point, because making decisions on the basis of outdated information is a recipe for failure. Honestly, you could have the absolute most accurate data in the entire world, but if it lands on a manager's desk 2 months too late, it's completely useless for steering the company.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Types of Control Systems.
Let's compare 2 of the major tools in a manager's toolkit: output control versus behavior control. Output control focuses squarely on the end results. It's about forecasting performance targets and then measuring the actual outcomes against them. Behavior control, on the other hand, doesn't really obsess over the final goal. Instead, it standardizes the rules and procedures used to get there. It's kind of like the difference between judging a salesperson strictly by their total revenue at the end of the month versus heavily regulating the exact script they have to read on every single cold call.
But hey, a quick word of warning when you're setting these up: don't overdo it. The guidelines for proper control lean heavily on Pareto's famous 80-20 rule, meaning managers should really only monitor the 20% of factors that determine 80% of the results. If you impose too many controls, you're just going to create confusion and a whole lot of unnecessary bureaucracy. Keep it focused.
All right, zooming in now with Section 5, Operational Control.
Operational control provides post-action evaluation against predetermined objectives. So this is where we step down from that high-level corporate strategy and look at the departmental level. We're checking our standards to see if the work is actually going as planned. Now, a huge pitfall here is setting the wrong standards. If a manager sets unreasonably high standards, it just breeds deep frustration and burnout. But if the standards are too low, it breeds laziness and unproductivity. Finding that exact perfect sweet spot, that is the true essence of operational control.
And finally, Section 6, On the Ground with Task Control.
Task control is defined as the process of ensuring that specific tasks are carried out effectively and efficiently, primarily by controlling things and performance. Think of it like this. A great task control system helps an individual employee plan out their day and their time without having to rely too heavily on anyone else. It reduces the interdependence of tasks and massively increases overall efficiency. But here is a fascinating psychological insight from the research. You might naturally think that people want less control placed upon them, right? Actually, it's the opposite. When people have low task control, meaning they lack control over how and when they perform their duties, and they can't even dictate their own work pace, their stress levels absolutely skyrocket. We all need just enough structure to feel grounded in our work.
That being said, we have to be super careful about how we implement this. If a supervisor uses a strict, top-down imposition of key result areas, or KRAs, without actually sitting down to get employee buy-in, the whole system is basically destined to fail. I mean, if you just dictate goals without letting your employees explain the reality of how their jobs actually work, they are never going to buy into the system. You end up replacing collaboration with dictation.
Which brings us to our final big takeaway for this explainer. Are you managing by agreement or just by command? The most successful organizations out there, they don't just control their employees. They build dynamic systems of feedback, flexibility, and shared objectives that naturally guide everyone toward that original boardroom strategy. So take a second and think about your own management style, or even the style of the people you work for. Which one is it?
We're diving into something absolutely crucial for any successful business: mastering strategic control. We're going to explore how an organization's control systems basically function like a biological nervous system to guide performance without, totally stifling it. Think about the human body for a second. Your brain doesn't have to consciously tell your heart to beat or your lungs to breathe, right? Yet it instantly reacts if you touch a hot stove. Well, a well-designed company operates the exact same way. We're going to unpack the specific mechanisms that allow managers to monitor, evaluate, and effortlessly adjust their business models. Here is our agenda for today. 1. The need for alignment. 2. 4 levels of control. 3. Everyday general control systems. 4. Sensing the unexpected. And 5. Designing your control blueprint. Let's jump right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the need for alignment.
So, as the balanced scorecard approach suggests, your control measures must tie as closely as possible to your ultimate goals. And what are those goals? It's all about developing distinctive competencies. Specifically, we're talking about efficiency, quality, innovativeness, and responsiveness to customers. You see, your controls aren't just there to track expenses like a fancy calculator. They exist to build these 4 pillars of competitive advantage. Whether you are streamlining production for efficiency, cutting down customer complaints for quality, empowering your team to take risks for innovativeness, or just monitoring frontline behaviors to guarantee customer responsiveness, literally every single metric has to push the organization toward these competencies. But here's the catch. Extreme care must be taken to ensure that the standards you use at one level don't accidentally cause massive headaches at another. For example, if a division single-mindedly tries to maximize its own performance metrics, that attempt must never conflict with overall corporate performance. Imagine setting rigid financial targets for one division, and they end up cutting corners so badly that it damages the whole company's reputation. No way. Goal congruence is absolutely critical here. Moving right along to Section 2. 4 levels of control. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do managers structure performance evaluation across an entire, highly complex business? I mean, you obviously can't use the exact same measuring stick for the CEO as you do for a frontline specialist, right? The metrics have to adapt. And that gives us this brilliantly structured hierarchy: corporate level, divisional level, functional level, and individual level. Managers at all of these levels must develop the most appropriate set of measures to evaluate performance for their specific area. But importantly, and don't miss this, controls at each level actually provide the basis for the managers at the lower levels to design their systems. It's like a cascading waterfall of command and feedback from the top down. Every single tier actively translates the goals of the tier above it into actionable daily targets. All right, Section 3, Everyday General Control Systems. Beyond just financial metrics, we have 3 other types of general control systems. First up is personal control. This is the very human desire to shape and influence behavior through face-to-face interaction. The most obvious kind is just direct supervision from a manager. It's super useful because managers can directly question subordinates about problems or new issues they are facing. It ensures people aren't hiding information that could blow up into major issues later. Oh, and in team settings, personal control actually comes from your peers, creating a great environment for learning and skill development while completely preventing free riding or shirking. Next is behavior control. Now, the intent here is not to specify the final goals, but rather to standardize the way or means of actually reaching them. By establishing a comprehensive system of rules, operating budgets, and predictable procedures, we make the outcomes totally predictable. Basically, if employees follow the rules, actions are performed and decisions are handled the exact same way, time and time again. The ultimate result is predictability and accuracy, which, let's be real, is the whole aim of all control systems. It's really fascinating to look at the direct contrast between these two. On one hand, you have the very human face-to-face adaptability of personal control, perfect for direct supervision and peer learning. On the other hand, you have the strict, standardized accuracy of behavior control. And honestly, you need both to function efficiently. Personal control handles the ambiguous, messy problems and provides mentorship. Meanwhile, behavior control provides the sturdy tracks that keep the daily train running on time, without needing constant managerial hand-holding. Let's move into Section 4, Sensing the Unexpected. You know, even if your company is aligned perfectly, organizations are still totally vulnerable to the chaos of sudden external shifts. A competitor drops a revolutionary product, a new regulation is passed overnight, or a massive global supply chain disruption hits. You simply cannot predict these things with standard operating budgets. You need specialized alert systems. We manage this everyday uncertainty through strategic surveillance. This is a broad-based vigilance activity happening in all daily operations, both inside and outside the organization. We're talking about utilizing business journals, attending trade conferences, and just having everyday conversations and observations to track events that are likely to threaten our strategy. It's basically keeping an ear to the ground to pick up on subtle shifts before they turn into full-blown storms. But what happens when a sudden, unexpected event actually strikes? Boom! Special alert control kicks in. This triggers an immediate, intense reconsideration of the firm's entire strategy. You definitely don't wait for the next quarterly review for this. Firms immediately activate pre-developed contingency plans and deploy specialized crisis teams to respond rapidly and ensure survival. Finally, Section 5, Designing Your Control Blueprint. Let's bring all this together. By using the balanced scorecard approach we discussed, managers ensure they complement financial metrics like return on invested capital or ROIC with these other strategic and behavioral controls. Relying purely on accounting profit is literally like driving a car while only staring at the rearview mirror. You have to balance ROIC with personal oversight, standardized behaviors, and vigilant external surveillance to pursue strategies that will actually maximize long-run profitability.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a crucial question to think about. Is your organization's control system creating competence, or is it just causing conflict? Are your 4 levels of control smoothly speaking to one another, or are they inadvertently forcing your divisions into a destructive tug-of-war? Take a really hard look at your own control blueprint today and make absolutely sure it is building the future you want. Thanks for tuning in.